Hey, do you enjoy fishing around in the dark? If you said yes, there's a strong possibility you're into catfish, walleyes, or striped bass. These species are widely known for their nocturnal prowling, and many would argue you're more likely to catch the heaviest hitters after sunset. What fewer people realize is that the same goes for trout. Most of us think of trout as a daytime target, but make no mistake, these fish, browns especially, are nocturnal hunters of the highest caliber. In summer, there are several benefits to chasing them at night, ranging from having pressured water all to yourself to helping ensure a safer, healthier release. There is, of course, a learning curve to night stalking on rivers and streams, but today, we're going to break down the most important things you need to know if you're ready for a new trout experience. I'm Outdoor Life Fishing Editor Joe Cermele, and this is the Quick Strike Podcast. So without a doubt, nighttime trout fishing is most popular among fly fishermen. Mousing for trout, meaning using a little cute floating mouse pattern to fool late-night carnivores, has actually been happening practically since fly fishing was invented, though it's become more popular than ever in the last, I'd say 5 years or so, thanks in part to social media. Now, I've been doing it myself for about 9 years, and I enjoy it very much because it is a challenge. Every summer, I make a special trip to the Upper Delaware River in New York to mouse with my good friend and veteran guide Joe Demalderis, who's joining me today. Joe has been guiding on some of the best wild trout water in the East for 30-plus years, and his operation, Cross Current Outfitters, is one of the few in the area that offers nighttime mouse trips. The truth, though, is that Joe's been messing around in the dark with a variety of different tactics for decades before nighttime trout fishing got so popular. Now, most important, this is not a game only fly anglers can win. If you're a conventional trout fisherman, you can get in on the action too. So what Joe and I focus on this week is not so much what's on the end of your line, but where you need to be standing, where you need to be casting, how trout behave differently when the sun goes down, what to expect out there in the blackness, how to stay safe, how to overcome some of the challenges that come with the approach, and how to maximize your success with a little pre-planning. Fair warning, though, if you pull the trigger, get out there and hammer a couple midnight browns, you might suddenly find yourself getting a lot less sleep. I couldn't think of a more fitting place to talk about night fishing for trout than in Joe Demalderis' guide shack on the Upper Delaware. I've been coming here, 10 years now, Joe? More than that. 15 years. Yeah. And Joe and I have a tradition where every summer, as busy as we are, life changes, we always get together to go mousing at night in the summertime for trout. And fair to say that over the last, I don't know, how many years has mousing in particular, that's using a mouse fly in the dark, grown in popularity? How long has it been? It's gotten very trendy.
It's gotten a little bit more just really in the last few years.
Yeah.
We first started doing it. There was nobody else doing it.
Right.
You didn't see a soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, once in a while, you do see people doing it. I know people that do it fairly regularly.
Yeah. But I mean, Joe and I shot some video on this many years ago. And so we've been doing this for quite a while now, and it's very fun. It's also very challenging. But what I really want to talk to you about, Joe, is I think it's fair to say that in general, there's a lot of trout fishermen in the country, all different kinds, not just fly. This is not just a fly thing, conventional, however you fish for them. Fair to say, in your opinion, that by and large, trout don't have the reputation of being nocturnal as do, say, catfish. Like everybody knows, you catch more catfish when you're out in the dark. You catch more striped bass when you're out in the dark. These are nocturnal things, but trout as a night game, largely overlooked, would you say? Is that fair?
Yes and no. There are places like, the upper Midwest where, hex hatches are big.
Sure. Sure. Tide, yeah.
So there are places where there is a tradition of night fishing.
Mm-hmm.
For most people, trout fishing, I fly fish basically my whole life. It's more of a visual, a visual thing. So once it gets dark, that visual part goes away.
Sure.
And so that ends it. The other thing is it is challenging, and it's challenging because if you can't cast well, it's not getting better when it gets dark.
Sure.
So you
less of a curve there, with spinning gear, obviously, but still, and it is challenging. That's why you and I are addicted to it. That's why we do it, because it really, challenges you. You have to use your ears and feel And you lose that sense of sight, which is a challenge. But more so, really, I think what people maybe don't realize is just how active trout are at night, right? Particularly brown trout.
Yeah.
So brown trout are the ones that are really the most active, right?
In general, they are. Rainbow trout. I mean, we catch a lot of rainbow trout in the dark, in Spinner Falls.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be up there eating.
Right.
But, at least here, mousing, rainbow trout aren't.
Yeah.
They're not, you're going to catch maybe one rainbow trout for, every 25 brown trout.
Yeah. Yeah. But brown trout, and I think it's fair to say because I've experienced it both ways, whether stocked or wild, in a lot of cases, these fish can be more active in the dark, right?
100%.
Yeah. And that's because what you end up with that maybe people don't think about are certain food sources that are much more prevalent in the dark than they are during daytime. Bigger meals, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bigger meals, more protein for the bite.
Yeah. And it's funny because in the fly world, mousing has gotten very trendy and popular. But, the reality is, how often are trout in any given area seeing a mouse, right? So even though we go out there and we throw these flies that are supposed to look like a little mouse, these fish are eating toads, right? Even Dobson flies. You're presenting a target because they can't really parse out what that is at night, right?
You're going back to very basic fishing techniques. So it's presentation and impressionistic baits,
sure,
or flies, right?
Yeah.
So it's an impression. So it's a behavior that the fish is targeting, right? So they can't see as well. They're seeing silhouettes against the sky, right? So that presentation is huge, And I know I've said this before. A lot of different people in different places is that I've seen exactly 2 mice in the river, in my life,
okay,
and neither one of them got eaten. By the way,
right.
But I've seen a zillion frogs, and when there's like frogs are spawning, down by the river. I don't know if they call it spawning or breeding, whatever frogs the right term is.
Yeah.
When that is really active, you will hear these big hits in the dark.
Yeah.
Right. They're eating frogs.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So when the presentation of that mouse at more being frog-like,
sure,
is what works. But put a frog fly on, it's just not.
Yeah. But the gist of that, I think, no matter what you're throwing, the point is, don't get too caught up in mimicking something specifically, because once the lights go out, they're reacting to surface movement. Now, to that end, though,
and they're out hunting, they're hungry, they're looking for food.
Right. It's very in vogue to mouse fish and throw these topwater flies at night. But correct me if I'm wrong. Like years before mousing on the East Coast, mousing's been a thing in a lot of places. Alaska, Michigan, arguably is like where that particular technique started. But you've spent time many years ago, long before I met you, just streamer fishing at night.
Yeah.
So there's subsurface opportunity here too. This is not always a feeding up to the surface thing.
100%. So streamer fishing is also very effective. I don't find it as much fun.
Yeah.
Because
you don't get to hear the explosion.
Fishing a mouse is kind of like dry fly streamer fishing.
Yeah.
It's a surface take, and so it's it's a little more exciting. When you're streamer fishing and a fish follows your streamer, flashes on your streamer, and swirls it, you don't even know it, right?
Yeah.
But with the mouse, you do.
Yeah.
So it keeps you interested. Something's happening, even if you're not getting totally bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of those swirls, we think swirls, maybe the fish missed a fly or whatever. It could just be a flat out refusal. But you didn't see the fish, so you don't know. So you're like, he missed it, or I missed it. He might have just refused you.
Yeah.
But swinging big wet flies. That goes back decades and decades and decades. And
sure.
People would do that. They'd swing these giant wet flies for the same reason. They catch big fish doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, this is a lesson here for whether you're a fly guy or conventional guy. The point being with this streamers at night game, which I've done some, and I agree with you. It's cool, but not as cool because you're just kind of throwing out there in the dark. You don't know where the hit's
you're just waiting to feel.
But it can be very effective. And if you throw, say, jerk baits, Rapalas or Smithwicks, that style of thing. The point there is that there are active fish that will still eat that style of lure in the dark, and in many cases, you have a different caliber of fish, which we'll get into in a minute. But where I wanted to go first, Joe, is you hear a lot of people say that they sort of have a night fishing for trout leaves a bad taste in their mouth because they're of the opinion that that's the fish need respite. Like trout are fished to all day long. We don't need to do this in the dark too. But in a lot of cases, I think it's fair to say, especially in the summertime, when arguably this style of fishing would be some of the best. In some cases, would you agree that you're actually doing better for the fish health-wise fishing them at night than you are during the day?
In many cases, you are. First, you're fishing generally cooler water, right? So it's that, number one.
Yeah, it's just naturally the coolest it's going to be all day is overnight.
You're fishing heavier leaders,
mm-hmm.
heavier line. You're landing them a lot quicker
mm-hmm.
than you would have if you were, catching them on light line, light tip. It's in the middle of the daytime. So you're landing them a lot quicker, and you release them, they're gone.
Right.
I mean, they're
right.
They're not played out.
And we see that here with mouse flies.
Right.
There's no need to worry about fish being line shy or leader shy.
Right.
So you can step up and you land a fish. They're often very hot when you catch them. They haven't
mm-hmm.
been worn out.
No.
Whereas if it was on a 5X fly tippet and zipping up and down the river by daytime,
you land them 25% of the time you would have during the daytime if you're on like 5X or 6X. I mean, it's like fish you would head on for 5 minutes, you have on for a minute.
Right. Yeah. And that's sort of a thing that I think gets flipped around because I do understand that argument, against night fishing for trout, but at certain times of year and in certain fisheries, a lot of people listening, I'm sure, live near, those sort of marginal streams that get probably a little too hot in the summertime where it's really safe for trout. You would know, Joe, because I know with your guide operation, there have been certain summers under certain low water conditions where you've cut your guides off. What is the actual temperature that they say, like, you don't want to fight trout in?
68 Fahrenheit.
Okay.
That's like pretty much the magic number. Once it hits 68, stop.
Right.
And I agree with that. I actually take it personally down to like 66, 67,
mm-hmm.
But even at that, the reality is they're cold water fish. They're not that active, if they're active at all at those temperatures.
Sure.
So the opportunity to catch fish is even a lot less.
Yeah.
When the water gets warm. So even if you weren't a catch and release person and you would have, look to keep a fish, you're going to catch fewer fish or not even catch anything once the water temperatures get in that range. But I found, though, doing this, like some of the pressured fishery during the daytime, a lot of fish by the summertime, when you catch them, will have a hook mark in them.
Yeah,
actually more often
and I've
than
seen
not.
that here. I mean, we're the West Branch of the Delaware, where I fish here with Joe, is a very well known piece of water. A lot of tourist anglers fish here, and I've witnessed that too. Like you can actually count the pinpricks.
There's
especially in the well known pools that guys clamor to.
At night, it's very rare to catch a fish that has a hook mark in it.
Right, which has told you what, essentially?
They're different fish.
Right.
The fish that are out at night are the nocturnal guys.
Yeah.
They only come out at night.
Yeah, and that would be something I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I would understand, right? If some people who are hearing you say that go, oh, BS, no way. There's not a set of fish that waits, or doesn't eat during the day and waits. But I've seen that with my own eyes, and I agree with that, especially in a place like this that does get a lot of pressure. They just seem to be healthier, no hook marks. It's like you almost feel as if those fish waited to come out in the dark. Now, a misconception about this, though, a lot of people think that nighttime trout fishing, the only reason you do that, the main reason you would do that, is to catch bigger trout, or trout of a caliber that maybe are just too smart to be fooled by day. And we've certainly learned that that's really not true. Agree with that?
Yeah, to a degree. I in general, yes, I do agree with you. When I look at averages, though, the average fish you'll catch at night is a bigger fish.
That I agree with.
Are they giants? No, they're not giants.
But they're not little dinky guys.
Right.
You're not
catching 14s, very rarely.
Sure.
You're catching, 18 to 20 inch or better fish.
Right.
In general. Like a 17-inch fish at night is kind of like on the small side.
Yeah.
So you do catch bigger fish at night. And that's part of the reason why you want to do it. That's kind of the thing. But the other thing is, it's 90 degrees out. It's a bright, sunny day. Nobody's eating.
Yeah.
It's hot out. Do you want to be out in that? And you want to fish
Sure.
today? It's your day off. You can fish today, or you're off tomorrow. So
Sure.
you can fish tonight. Why not go out when it's more comfortable?
Yeah.
And the fish are more active.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I've even been in some scenarios where, because I'm sure a lot of people like me, like where I live, I'm 3.5 hours away from the Upper Delaware here, and it's, predominantly you're put and take stock streams where I live, and for the most part, a lot of these systems by Memorial Day, they're kind of warm puddles connected by trickles. You know what I mean? These are not spring-fed streams or tailwater streams. And while I do understand a lot of people live near that stuff, a lot of us don't. And even there, I have caught stock trout after dark messing around into June, because that might be your only window once it gets that hot, whatever's left, whatever has survived in the deeper holes, when they're going to be active. And I think, for busy people, and you and I are busy guys, we have a lot of stuff going on. A lot of people do. I think the night thing also opens up just sort of more opportunity that people wouldn't have thought of before.
No, it does. And I mean, people kind of glamorize a lot of different things. I mean, to me, it doesn't matter. I mean, they're fish, okay? We catch and release fish. That's how my business is run. And that's how most of the people, the vast majority of people who fish this river, behave. They catch and release people. Now, some people have taken that to a religion.
Right.
I personally don't think there's anything wrong in killing a fish.
Sure.
Except these wild fish. Wild fish is something special.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why we release them.
Right.
To preserve them.
Right.
Because they are special. They're unique. Not because killing a fish is wrong. All right. There's no, it's no different hooking a fish at night. You're not doing anything different to it than if you hook it in the daytime.
Right.
You're doing one thing different.
Right.
Except you are landing it quicker.
Yeah.
And you're releasing them in a healthier condition.
Yeah.
Than you would have during the day.
Which is so ironic. I mean, it's sort of a little side tangent here to the argument, but I mean, in fly fishing in particular, and sometimes too in conventional fishing, I've heard similar things where people like to give people a hard time about overgunning their tackle. Like that's like sort of a barbaric thing. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, you're using this heavy line and that's barbaric and that hurts the fish. When in reality, like you say, a fish that is fought and landed quicker, regardless of scenario, nighttime, it doesn't matter. If you care about catch and release, ultimately ends up with a healthier release. The less time it's fighting.
100%. The fish is a better shape.
Yeah. So one of the most interesting things that I've learned since I've been night fishing for trout up here with you is you have to sort of change your whole perception of what a good piece of trout water is in the dark versus the daytime a lot of times. So we gravitate towards riffles and fast pools, and we focus on current. And a lot of times at night, and this is another thing I think people miss, I always tell people you want to fish a lot of the water that by day you would consider junk water.
True. During the day, you're fishing like current seams, you're fishing riffles, you're fishing rocks, you're fishing places fish are staged waiting for the river to feed them.
Yeah.
And at night, the fish are in water, the fish that are looking to eat, they're in water hunting, they're being predators.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the slower stuff in general.
Yeah.
Right. And shallows, they're going up into shallows, they're looking for frogs, bait fish, whatever. And that's what I focus on. And that's what I've learned, that's productive. That's why I focus on that.
And I've had people surprised by hearing that. But again, I think that is one of those things that not enough people realize, because we associate trout, like you said, with being behind this boulder in this seam. And you sort of get in your head that that's where that fish lives. But I mean, brown trout in particular, they can cover an incredible amount of water in a night if they want to. I mean, these are roaming, hunting fish, much more so in the dark than by daylight, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, they're very territorial. Brown trout by nature are just territorial. They stay in the same places. They have their home, more or less, right? And you'll find that same fish against the same boulder, against the same bank, by the same stump,
Mhm.
and over again until nighttime comes.
Right. Yeah.
And then they don't really wander that far. It's not like they're going, a mile away.
Sure.
But in that little neighborhood,
Right, within
of
that
theirs,
neighborhood.
right,
Yeah.
and they kind of reach out. They just know, well, if I just go up into this little shallow backwater
Mhm.
kind of eddy area, that's where they're going to find bait fish, whatever, frog on a water, or toad or something. And they're survivors. They want to eat. They're not out there like we're out there having fun. They're out there surviving.
We'll be right back after this short break. So, I mean, you're one of the outfitters up here that actually offers mousing trips. And I know one thing we always joke about is you get people, and I've had it too, people get very interested in this. They want all the information. They're stoked to go do it. But then you often find that when somebody does this for the first time, night fishes for trout, they either get it and fall in love with that challenge and get ate up with it, or they find that they just don't like being out on a river in the dark as much as they thought they would. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I mean, some people get freaked out. I mean, every little, who knows what it was, a raccoon, a deer, whatever.
Right.
That you
What's
hear
that?
walking
Yeah,
around, you get all nervous and jerky.
Yeah.
And, then a lot of people, I kind of grill people before we take them out. I mean, if you can't cast in the daylight, it's not going to get better.
Sure.
Right. It's just,
Sure.
and you got a safety consideration to take into account.
Yeah.
So you have to just be pretty spot on your casting, very confident. And not that you have to cast far. You don't have to cast like 60, 70 feet even.
Sure.
But you just have to have a pretty good basic pick it up, lay it down.
Yeah.
Know where you have a pretty good idea where it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you also have to have the right mindset. You're going to miss fish. You're going to get tangled.
Sure.
It's going to happen.
You're going to be in the trees.
Right.
Yes.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So you can't get upset about it.
Right.
You can't like go, damn, whatever. I can't believe I did that. Well, believe you did that.
Yeah.
Because everybody does that.
Yeah.
So you have to have that right mindset, and you have to have the right expectation.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we've done it. We've had banner evenings, and we've done it where I don't know if we ever struck out a zero, you and I doing it, but pretty damn close.
Yeah. It's certainly not a given. The conditions matter.
No.
The moon matters.
A lot of it matters.
Yeah. I mean, how active the fish were at sundown can matter sometime. If there was a bug hatch, can make or break it. I've also, assuming a lot of people who might try this would do this on foot. Now that, we've sort of explained that, browns will go out on the hunt. They will move around. I always tell people, a mistake that you can make, or a mistake that I know people made because they would, let me know, oh, I tried this and here's what I did. You can't approach it, even if you know the river like the back of your hand. You can't think of it like daytime fishing where you're going to cover a mile of river on foot or spot hop. The better play is to sort of assess where that nighttime slower feeding water that some of these fish can move into will be. And knowing that they are moving around, you just sort of plant yourself in one spot and keep covering the same area, assuming fish are moving to you versus you having to go.
100%. I mean, if you're going to, two things is if you're going to wade, you have to intimately know that piece of water you're going to wade.
Sure.
You don't show up in the dark.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Right? You get there. You get there before dark.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And if you're going to be in a boat, you have to know every rock in that river, every single place. I mean, intimately.
Yeah.
Because there are many times fog rolls in, different things happen. Rain comes in, you can't see.
Yeah.
You can't see to begin with. Now it's even amplified darkness, right?
Yes.
So you have to really know. So if you fish a certain piece of river or stream and you fish there once a month, twice a month, even just once a week, you probably are not going to know it well enough to do it safely.
Sure.
Okay. And, and if you add a boat into the equation, I mean, you really, things go wrong quick.
Yeah.
I mean, that things go, when you're in your boat, when you're on the water,
sure.
when something happens, it's fast.
Yeah.
So you really have to know the piece of water you're on. Like if you can't row it in the daytime, with a blindfold on. You're not
Sure.
going to do it at night.
Sure. And for the record, right, if you own any kind of watercraft, whether that be a kayak or a raft or drift boat or whatever, I mean, I will say right now, I mean, I own my own drift boat. I know how to row. I've been fishing up on this particular piece of water with Joe for many years. I don't get here enough to be comfortable rowing a boat down this piece of river. That's why I do it with you, because you know every rock.
No, and when I let you row, I let you row the baby pool.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Joe lets me row the baby pool, and he's always like, kick it left a little bit. Because there's a rock coming up on your right, because you do know. But I mean, you have to be safety minded. And again, even if you're doing it on foot, if it's somewhere that you don't fish often, then yes, you have to get there in daylight and really scout. Know where you're going to be when it's dark. Know how to get in. Know how to get out. Now, I've had people reach out to me and go, "Hey, when you're mousing, do you have a headlamp on?" Right? Obviously, you need light to get in and out of a river. Let's talk about that for a minute. That's like a cardinal sin of any kind of night fishing. You don't shine a light on the
two
water.
Things. It spooks fish. And if you put a headlight on, you're going to pull every single bug into your face.
This is true. Yeah.
And it's going to be even worse than sitting there in the dark.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
just like, it just happens. And I think most people learn to shut the light off because as soon as they turn the light on, every bug in the river just showed up on their face. So you don't want to wear a light. A light is used to get to the water and from the water.
Yeah.
And to dehook a fish.
Right.
Or untangle a leader maybe.
Yeah.
But that's when you use your light. So you got to have a light. And having a green light or a red light is good. You don't have to light up the bank. And if you do light up the bank, you're not going to really do well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I use a red light when I do it, which doesn't spook fish as much. But regardless of the light source, you always want to turn off the water if you can and shine that light on land if you're retying, And you also need it because you have to check, whether it's a lure or a streamer or a mouse fly, you have to be able to check that lure often because you can't see and you don't know. I mean, one blade of grass or one tiny leaf off there. So, I mean, there are sort of extra steps involved. I mean, it is certainly more challenging, but it's one of those things that can catch you a lot more fish and also, get you on primo water. If you live on a system or a river that is very crowded and very pressured, you can really sort of find some alone time. And I will say it is something that if you're into trout fishing and you have whether it's a stock stream in the spring or a wild stream in the summer, it is definitely worth trying. I will say that even a smaller fish, a non-trophy fish, say a 17-inch wild brown trout, when you catch that fish at night, to me, just because of the challenge that went into it and you're out there alone and you feel like you've really accomplished something. Like a 17-inch fish to me, Joe, is cooler at night than it is during the day, even though it's the same fish, whether it's noon or midnight.
I started night fishing well over 45 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking just trout fishing. I'm talking fishing for bass at night, with bait casters, just jitterbugs and things like that.
And by the way, you bring up the jitterbug, which, as people know, is one of my favorite lures. I that will catch a trout at night. I can tell you right now. It makes a ripple. It'll catch a trout at night. Yeah.
100% believe it. But the reason I started fishing at night was once upon a time, I kind of had like so-called real job.
Yeah.
And the only time I could go fishing was at night.
Yeah.
If I didn't go at night, I didn't go. And when you go fishing at night, it does not mean you go out at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night and fish till 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
You might just fish till 11.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't have to be this all night bender.
No, it doesn't have to be this big production, right? So you can just go out for a few hours and get some quality fishing in when you couldn't have gone before, or you wouldn't have gone. You didn't have the time during the day.
Sure.
You're working all day, you have family commitments, let's say on a weekend, whatever, you have kids. And all right, when can I go fishing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I could go fishing. I'll go out after dinner. Everything's good.
Yeah.
I can go out. I come back. I'm home by 11:30, 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
And go to bed, get up, go to work the next day.
And if you stick a good one out there, if you stick like a personal best, you'll be out there all the time.
No, and I know in some fishing cultures, like walleye fishing, is pretty popular at night.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And catfishing, eel fishing, things like that. And even bass fishing, I think has always been a little more popular at night.
Yeah.
But it's still, and I get it. It's not for everybody,
Right.
It really isn't. It just isn't. Everybody's a little different personality, different makeup.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it, because you don't like to do it, does not make it wrong.
Right. Right. So if you had to leave us, Joe, with one, if you remember nothing else about nighttime trout fishing, remember this.
It's fun.
I like that, and it is. Believe me when I tell you, nocturnal trout fishing is, in fact, extremely fun. I will back up Joe's last words there. At the end of the day, that's why we do this, because it's fun. Now, during my visit with Joe, when we recorded this episode, we were treated to one of the calmest, quietest nights I've ever had on the river. You could hear a pin drop out there, and suddenly that silence would just be shattered by the slash of a big brown somewhere out there in the darkness. It was wild. It's one of those deals where your heart is in your throat during every single retrieve. And I hope perhaps this gave you guys some motivation to try something new if you've never hit your local stream after hours before. Now, if you happen to be in New York's Catskill Mountains and want to try night fishing under the tutelage of Joe's very experienced crew, you can find them on Instagram at Cross Current Fly Fishing. You can find me on Instagram at Joe Cermele 138. And if you'd like to hear the nitty-gritty details of this most recent mouse trip with Joe, all the chop-busting laughs that were had and many mistakes that were made during 2 epic nights of fishing, check out episode 89 of my weekly long-form podcast, Cut and Retie, wherever you get your podcasts. Huge thanks to our sound engineer, Mike Pederson of 85 Audio, for making us sound so nice and clean. And remember, if you've got a topic you'd love to hear covered on this show, let me know. Send an email to quickstrikepodcast@gmail.com.